So my name is Gowtham, and I'm a usability engineer at VSF Experts and the author of the book UX Burner. So a good user experience is often a key differentiator for successful products, yet many product development teams find it really hard to bring design into their Scrum process. In this talk, I will show you a solution on how to constantly design better products faster with Scrum teams using a new approach called UX Burner. So first, I will talk about why we created UX Burner, and then how we have been successfully using this approach in our own product development process with some real examples, and then a little bit about our new playbook that will be coming soon. So about my company, VSF Experts, we have long experience in dealing with projects from automotive and manufacturing industries. Our core expertise lies in products and IT services, user experience, and agile software development. So our headquarters is at Mannheim. We also have locations in US, Poland, and Romania. So I would like to take you back to 2015, where a scenario helped us to come up with a new idea where we designed a new process to face product development. So in the year 2015, we started with a compliant software that helps vehicle type approval process to make it more efficient. And we were thinking about a way to optimize our product development process. So we thought of redesigning the process that we were actually doing there. So the vehicle type approval process is making, once the vehicle is manufactured, you need to have a set of requirement documents to be fulfilled before they sell their vehicles. And the dealers come up with a lot of data collected from different departments and try to give their input to the authority for getting the type approval process. It's still being done as a manual way, and that's why we came up with an approach to build a software that can help these users to make their work efficient and life easier. Like many other companies, we have a separate design team and development team, with the design team having their own design process and the development team following their Agile Scrum. So, and then, like many other companies, our product development team had the design process with the design team doing in isolation work, first trying to do user research, finding out empathy from the users, trying to come up with concept, iterating on solution, testing with the users, and then handing over the final prototype to the development once the research is done. And the whole process turned out to be a chaotic experience because we always deal with this back and forth communication between design and development team, and there isn't any common understanding what we are trying to solve with our product development. Just the designers have an idea of what they are trying to solve with the product, but the developers have no clue what they are trying to solve from the designers. So there is a big bridge found between the design and development team. So when there is a separation between design and development team, often teams face a problem with having collaboration, shared perspective, and velocity of learning. And it also makes the whole product development team difficult to stay agile. So some of the top 3 challenges faced by most of the companies when they're trying to build design into the Scrum teams. First is problem solving in isolation. Just the design team deal with the problem solving and then hand it over the hi-fi prototype to the development team, and there isn't any proper communication what they are doing. UX is not prioritized equally. User experience is often thought as the task of designers, and developers don't often involve into this process of having a common alignment what the designers are trying to communicate with their design once they hand it off during implementation. And inconclusive results. So especially when you're working with Scrum teams, designers try to go for a random design process or methodologies and come up with results that are totally inconclusive, and it doesn't really influence the design decisions that we are making during the process. So I was thinking that why does designers have to just focus on creating great products? If we apply this design thinking mindset in designing a process that can help teams to create better products, wouldn't that be great? So by doing this, designers always have two advantages. When they try to come up with new process to help design better products, they first optimize and stabilize the design process, and then by doing that, the process helps them to come up with an idea to deliver great product experiences using the process. So doing an upfront design process is still a chaotic experience within the team. So we need to think about an integrated way to both work as one balanced team by not thinking about the separation between design and development, but thinking as one whole team, thinking about the user experience of the product. So thinking about these problems that companies face in bringing design into the Scrum process, I experimented a lot with my colleagues in doing research, what are the existing methodologies being applied to bring design into Scrum. We tried a bunch of different ideas and then came up with a reliable working solution that can help teams to overcome this obstacle in bringing design into the Scrum team with the help of the approach UX Burner. So now I will show you how we use the UX Burner in building our own products. One of our product is Vehicle Compliance Expert, VCX. It helps to the automotive industries to efficiently get their compliance done with using our product. So one of the challenge of this product is to reduce complexity in vehicle type approval process by providing efficient way to data entries. So before starting a week of UX Burner, we assemble a cross-functional team, including CEOs, product owners, designers, project managers, and developers. So the goal of this Burner Canvas workshop is to have a common alignment between the product team, the whole product team. We identify the scope and product definition of what we are trying to achieve with the product. So there are certain steps need to be followed in this workshop. Some of the steps include identification of the problem statement that we are trying to solve with the problem, and then the impact that we are going to create with the users and the business. And then we try to gather assumptions from a different group of users and trying to reframe that as how might we questions that gives an idea to explore more about the problem space that we are trying to solve. And also we end up in a direction at the end of this workshop with a minimum desirable experience, which is really different from minimum viable experience. We are not just focusing on the fast, cheap, and just the usable solution for our users, but still being more empathetic and creating an experience from day one that can keep the users talking and make them coming back to us already. So that's where you can set a differentiation from your products from our competitive products by not just creating a minimum cheap usable solution, but creating an experience that is more making the user more emotionally attached with your branding and your product. So once we are done with this Burner Canvas workshop, we extract user stories from the output of this Burner Canvas by choosing one specific experience that we want to focus in the week of UX Burner. So next, these are all some of the artifacts that comes as an output from this Burner Canvas workshop. Some of them include hypothesis, that includes the impact on the users and the business. We also sketch out the process map, flowcharts, and then we gather the how might we's. And then at the end, we land up in the minimum desirable experience using a storyboard exercise. The structure and the steps involved in this workshop is clearly documented in our playbook, which you will be coming to know later. So once you are done with the Burner Canvas workshop, you will start a UX Burner week. So if you already have a Scrum process with a 1-week sprint or a 2-week sprint, it's still a versatile process. We usually prefer short sprints. Our sprint process is just 1-week sprint. And based on that, if we think about UX Burner, you start with Monday and end in Friday. So on Monday, you have a bunch of different ceremonies to do. You start with recruiting users, sprint planning, design workshop, and prototyping. So first, one member from the product team takes the responsibility to recruit user for Friday. By doing this, you are not just far away from testing your product. It's just 5 more days away from what you are actually going to build during the week. And you also have another advantage by doing testing every week of the sprint. The users will try to understand what you are trying to solve in every week. So once the recruiting is done, you start with the sprint planning process. In sprint planning process, you identify the stories that can be implemented in the current sprint, and also you identify the stories that need a bit more thought and iteration during the current sprint. The stories that need a bit more thought and iteration will be only the prototype at the end of the sprint, and will not be an implemented solution by the end of the sprint. The stories that will be implemented in the current sprint are the stories that are really ready to be implemented. So once we are done with sprint planning, we take the stories that need a bit more thought and iteration using a session called design workshop. The design workshop is uniquely structured. It includes the cross-functional team, like we saw in Burner Canvas. We include CEO, product managers, product owner, designers, and developers to follow the steps of the workshop, and then come up with the solution sketches where we pick the best competing solution that we will be prototyping and testing but by the end of the week. We also use this kind of design workshop in a remote setup by using Atlassian's product, Confluence, and Jira. It becomes really handy for us to make the remote teams get involved into our design workshop, and we also document the results using Confluence, and we break down the design workshop in several steps for them to easily go through the process. Sketches will be sketched out in each location, and then they will be uploading it in the Confluence. And then we make a decision by voting it, and then we start prototyping. So once we are done with the design workshop, we take this competing solution, distribute the task among the team, designer, developer, whoever who are interested in taking the prototyping task can take over and start the prototyping. And then we go to the next day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So during these days, we hold up regular stand-ups and refinement meetings to talk about blockers we face during this day, and refinement meetings to keep our backlog clear and executable for the upcoming sprint. We also adopt a pairing and sharing methodology with product owner, designer, and developers using tools like HipChat, Slack, UXPin, and real-time board. So we make sure that we are done with prototype by end of Thursday, so that we will be testing it on Friday. Once, as mentioned, once the developers are done with the design workshop session, they will continue with the regular sprint work. So let me show you how the pairing and sharing works. We use tools like Skype, Slack, or HipChat channels to have this continuous flow of communication between designers, developers, and product owners. We talk about what we want to create in prototypes. If there is any discussion going on, we try to nail it down and come into a conclusion. And we just add enough code and design to test it by the end of Friday. So once we are done with prototype, we go to, we use tools like UXPin and InVision that helps to create an actual looking prototype that can be put in front of users. Also, we have these design system features coming in handy with these prototyping tools that make the prototyping more fast and efficient. You don't have to prototype everything from the start, but you can still use the existing components that you create and store in the design system. You can just drag and drop from the design system and create a prototype that you can test it. So in Friday, you have two important ceremonies apart from the regular stand-up and retrospective. You have team demo and user test. In team demo, so in user test, before user test, I want to mention that you create a plan, user test plan, where you focus on what you really need to test. There are certain steps that will be coming up in the playbook where you guys can follow. And then we gather the results using user test report, which is really simple and concise, that you will be sharing it with the whole team once you are testing with the user test. We also use Skype and lightweight tools like Hangouts to do our remote user test sessions. And we also involve the whole team to watch what actually the user is interacting every Friday with our implemented solution and the prototype we have built within the week. So that you don't have to spend time in gathering the result. Usually the designers used to go for the interviews, talk to the users, get the insights, and then they concise that into a digestible material, and then they transfer it to the team, which is kind of really time consuming. By learning together as one whole team, by watching what the users are actually interacting with your product, it really helps to avoid a lot of documentation as well. So this is another product development process where we build a product called Arbiter. So this product solves the goal to track the build issues that many manufacturing units come up with. So the idea behind this product is to track all these build issues from different departments and give input for one holistic system, the product that we are trying to build. So these are all some of the prototypes that we came up with this product, Arbiter. So some of the principles of UX Burner: work and share as one balanced team. So instead of having this separation between design and development, you just think about one team that is trying to achieve the user goal and trying to focus more on the user experience of the product from the day one. Learn early and often. You don't have to do months of research upfront and then gather data and then hand it over to development team to start implementing that. Instead, you just work within the sprint, but still keeping your learning loop going on slowly. Give equal importance to design and development work. So you have a right balance in balancing the backlog with both the design and development work for the specific sprint. You don't need to work any upfront activities. So using of shorter sprints. So we always prefer 1 week sprint because it's so short, concise, and it keeps the team focused. By doing two or 3 week sprint, it turns out still into the previous way of working, resulting in a waterfall way of communication between the development team and the design team. Experiment rapidly. So you have this goal in mind with your product team, like you need to come up with this prototype by the end of Friday so that you need to test by end of Friday. For that, you take the steps slowly, following the steps mentioned in the ceremonies during the week. Make users awesome. So thinking about users' experience is really important. You don't have to just keep on pushing code in front of users, but rather step back and think about the actual experience that we want to offer with our code. So it's really important to create an effective cross-functional team. The whole team should be responsible for the user experience of your product. It's not, designing is not just the task of the designers, but it's the whole team that can focus on the user experience. And with the help of the tools that we have from design thinking and other lean methodologies, it gives a framework for the team to really actively participate in this workshop and come up with a definite solution to frame a proper user experience. So let's stop this waterfall culture between design and development by not working upfront design and trying to do this chaotic handoff between design and development team, but just working as a one whole team. So our upcoming UX Burner session will be conducted in University of Mannheim, where a team of students will be using the approach to build the lunch planner mobile app. So I would like to show you how we came up with this UX Burner approach from the year 2015 to 2018. So once we had this problem between design and development, how they're trying to harmonize the practices, we did research scientific research available so far by reading a lot of scientific stuff. And then we talked with the Lean, Agile, and UX communities to identify the gaps. And then we came up with the solution. Then we tested out within our real projects and even in our own product development process. And we perfected it by optimizing it. And then we thought of this could be really useful to share with this Agile community and UX communities. So we tried to convey this idea in UX conferences and using our trainings. And finally, we thought it would be really useful for creating a playbook that can help teams to actually use the tool within their team. So if you guys are interested, check out the UX BURNER Playbook. It has no BS, but a do-it-yourself guide that can help any teams to onboard easily in their Scrum process. It has step-by-step instruction, and it doesn't need any mentoring or training from anyone. And it includes the worksheets and tools available in the back of the book, easy. So it's coming soon in Amazon. We are working on it, so watch out for the book. So we also offer UX BURNER trainings and workshop. So if interested, please check out our website, vsfexperts.de. So thank you guys for listening. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay, jetzt geht's. Are there any questions? Hey.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for your talk. And on one time you said you shouldn't work ahead of sprints, but within the UX Burner Week, the developers are not already developing the stuff that you scribbled in the design workshop, right? So basically you are working like 1 week ahead.
Yeah, so when we take a traditional approach, the design team will be working like 2 or 3 sprints ahead, doing a month long of research. But trying to follow the agile principle, you just work in 1 week sprints. But 1 week ahead is much more better than working 2 or 3 weeks ahead, right? And it doesn't create much communication difference working with a 3 week sprint and then having a 1 week ahead sprint. So, but still the developers are actively involved within the sprint, focusing on their current sprint work and also actively participating in building the prototype that will be estimated in the upcoming sprint.
Okay, so thank you. And I like that you do the user testing at the end of the week. And in your experience, did it happen that at the end of the week, the user tests were like horrible and you found out your design is not working and then you just did it again the next week, or how are you doing it with the backlog and the developers having stuff to do if the design is not working?
Yeah, so we have this, once we are done with the user test, we have a clear plan what we want to actually test from the users, because without a clear goal, it will be a total mess. So we come up with the plan. It has this step-by-step guide, like how to frame the user test plan. So once you test with the users, you see the results, and then you go back to your burner canvas, the beginning of the sprint, where you assemble the team and then form the scope and product definition. You have the hypothesis, because you select a specific hypothesis that you want to validate by the end of this week. And you trace back to the hypothesis and see if you have actually validated your hypothesis or not, because that's the first priority you want to validate. And then you dig deeper in dealing with the usability problems and all the stuff. So first, hypothesis. If it's valid, then you still proceed to the next sprint by implementing the design in the upcoming sprint. If the hypothesis is invalid, then you need to start again from scratch. So, and there is also another case, if your hypothesis is valid and you still have these small design changes that need to be optimized, you collect them as UX debts, like technical debts, and then include in your backlog. And make sure that you keep an eye on that in the upcoming sprint and not making that too far away in implementing or correcting the UX steps. So that's how the communication works.
Okay, thanks.
Hope it helps.
Hey, I have a question. I don't know if you said it, but how big is the team within the UX Burner sprint?
So it depends upon your team size. It can go up to 8 members. We usually go for 5 to 8 members. We have the diversity in including developers from day one, so that they are not missed from what we are talking about from day one. And then we also include CEOs, product manager, product owner. Yeah.
Okay, so 5 to 8, you say. Yeah. Is there a Scrum Master in there?
Yeah,
I'm also have a Scrum Master.
We also have a Scrum Master, but his role is to keep the velocity of the implementation of the current Scrum in order. And as a designer, you can take a responsibility of facilitating these workshops within the sprint, or even if you have only one Scrum Master, if he knows how to conduct these activities within the sprint, it makes the work still easy. The Scrum Master still can take this task as a moderator and facilitate while he facilitates the other meetings, sprint planning, retrospective, and all these stuffs.
Okay, I have one follow-up. If you have a CEO in there, right?
Yeah.
Do you have, in your experience, problems with communication? Because, you know, if you have like a more traditional company, not agile, then the CEO might have like a, you know, higher power and everything like that. So what's that like in your experience?
So we in our company, we have this flat hierarchy. We don't have this CEO thing and stuff, all are equal kind of perspective. So the CEO takes part in this design workshop and he have his voice as well. So at the end, it's not just the CEO who's giving the call for the best computing solution. It's the whole team taking decision, that trying to just make the decision, nailing it down and choose the best possible idea. So we don't have this hierarchy thing going on in our decision-making process, even though we have CEOs in these design sessions.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Hi. Thanks for your talk and your insights. When you say you have 1 week sprints and you have all the regular Scrum meetings and stuff, is there actually so much time to implement and focus on the tasks? Because when the week is stuffed with all the meetings and review and user test and I don't know.
Yeah, it's a nice question. Many developers also still ask these questions, and it is easy for us because basically you need to balance the work between the design and development. Try not to focus more on the design details, and it should be possible. We have experimented that, and so far everything came out successful, but just minor technical backend issues were really hard with that. But it's really easy to focus both on the design and development within a week.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. I also have a question about the short-term sprints. What's the outcome of sprint in your company? Is it a shippable product or is it a tested UX design?
So we have 2 types of deliverables for every sprint. The one is the release for the specific sprint, and then we also have the prototype that will be estimated in the next sprint. So the released version will just be, it's not a shippable, but it's just a released version. It depends upon the stories that we take in the specific sprint. And we show that to the business and get the feedback by the end of the sprint. It's not just directly shipping the product to the customers, but involving the customers once we deploy the stories.
Okay, what happens to the tested increments? Do you implement them in further sprints, and is it the same team that implements the detailed story?
So if I'm correct, do you mean the results of the user test?
Yes.
How will they implement the results of the user test? So once we test it, we see if we validated the hypothesis or not. So we still have this small minor optimization. If we have such things, we collect that as UX depths, and we prioritized in the upcoming sprint, like which step we need to really put effort on in trying to implement in the next sprint.
Okay. No, what I meant is when you have a feature ready for implementation. Is it the same team that implements?
Yes.
Okay, and they do it in the next sprint, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the next sprint, we go to the backlog and see what are the depths we have from the previous sprint, and then choose which is more sensible to implement, doable in the current sprint, and we pick the story and implement in the sprint.
And how often do you release a version?
Every
to the
week
customer?
we have the deployment thing going on.
Okay. So it's a mini waterfall. You have one sprint where you test UX design, and then in the following sprints, or some following sprints, you implement the detailed story.
Yeah, the stories that are uncertain in the backlog will be just the prototype in the sprint by the end of the sprint, because by focusing that in the same sprint will be really a risk, and it's not possible. That's why we use that as a still as a communication that that the developers can involve from day one, like what will be implemented in the next sprint.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
How do you find test users, and which tools do you need for the user tests?
So since our users are not B2C, we call the business team corresponding from the corresponding company, and then they come to our place, or we go there. It will be from 3 to 5 users. We make this as a habit, like testing with 3 to 5 users every week, like whatever comes at the end of the sprint. We have this policy called test what you got policy. Like what you deploy by the end of the sprint and what you have, like you have two things, the prototype of the current sprint, and you also have the deployed build of the stories that you took in the beginning of the sprint. So we put those things together in front of users. 3 to 5 users every week will be really good, rather than doing a big bang test once you deploy the whole thing.
How many developers and UX people are in your team?
So the product development team that I'm working right now, we have distributed developers that are like 4 to 5 developers in Poland, and then 1 product owner from Mannheim and 2 designers from Mannheim, including a Scrum Master.
And are this the same developers who like to work on the design workshop?
So we don't have this exchange of development with our product development process. We try to make sure that all the stakeholders stay the same from the beginning of product development till the end. Because by exchanging the developers or changing the designers, you need to have some time to start again, telling them where we stopped the product development, and it still becomes a communication gap. So we don't do this exchange of designers or developers once we are working with UX Burner.
So you have the same developers who like to work in the design workshop, and other developers who are focusing on developing and coding.
Yeah, we have this mixture of the developers who come forward that if they have time, they participate. But we still insist that all should participate in the design, and they give a buy-in coming forward and then participating. It's just we don't put like a 1-day full design workshop session. That will be a mess for them to focus on their implementation. Just a 2 hours or 3-hour workshop that it's easy. We break down into steps that give some creative confidence for the developers, and then we come up with the solutions that we will prototype. And even the prototyping task will be distributed with the developers. They try to take that with involvement, and then we work together, designers and developers work together, talk about during our prototyping process, and then we establish such kind of communication with this pairing and sharing mode of communication.
Okay. Are there any more questions here? You told about the playbook. How can we learn this UX burner method?
So 2 weeks back, I presented this idea in Convey UX, which is an annual UX gathering in Seattle, Washington. There I gave a free handbook of 70 copies. So if guys are interested, I will be ready to give the playbook. Then we can talk about that later. So this is a sample copy. It's a short version of the playbook. The bigger version has some real stories, how we started and what are the things to do with the real product development. And the short version is just gives you a framework to actually onboard in your team. It also has worksheets and other frequently asked questions attached with this booklet. So if you are interested, then please ping me. I will help you with this.
Okay. So if there are not more questions, now it's a bit time to talk and discuss. Feel free to drink a water or a coffee, and we talk a bit more.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, please feel free.